welcome to today's webinar. And I'll explain very quickly what we mean by an webinar. It's going to be more of less than a lecture and a lot more of a conversation, a lot more of a moment where we're going to have three teachers share with you some of their thoughts and their insights about, the overall topic for today is lesson planning. So we're going to have Gloria, Tatiana, and Julián sharing with you what goes in their mind when it comes to planning the lessons and what they have to do also to comply with, as we said in the previous class, there is the macro level expectations where we have standards and we have the curricular guidelines. Some schools, they have, for example, some guidelines by Cambridge or international baccalaureate programs or Common European framework, and the schools expect you to comply with that. And then there is the micro level, which is what teachers get to do once they enter the room and they close the door. Or in the case of the virtuality, once you have everybody in the platform and you start doing your thing. So there are some questions that I suggested the presenters, and we're going to talk around them. But again, it's not supposed to be a lecture. It's more like an actual conversation that stems from the everyday realities, and I think that's important. The everyday realities that teachers face. Some of the everyday realities that no matter how hard I try as the methods and approach instructor, I can only give you a taste of that reality from my vantage point. And that's why I always like to bring the teachers to tell you that other part of the reality. So I'll quickly introduce our quick introduction, and then as they talk, they'll introduce themselves as well. I'll start with Tatiana Chiquito, which I think for some of you, she requires very little to no introduction because some of you have already had her as your instructor in communicative competence courses. And I think some of you have three, and I think some of you have it this semester as your instructor in the discourse analysis course, I think it is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Tatiana is currently finishing her master's in literature. She's one of the coordinators at the SILECS program I forgot the name of the school. She'll tell you about it. She's just about to finish her master's in literature. And she does a lot of research both with the Literacies and Languages Project Research Lab and as an affiliated member of ACENARRE. So she has an extensive background as a writer, as an academic writer, as a literary writer, as a musician, as a singer, as a multiple language teacher. She's like a true Renaissance woman in every possible sense of the word. Next, I'll introduce Gloria Gutiérrez-Arismendy, who we've already had, as we had Tatiana in a previous occasion, as a guest in one of our webinars. Gloria finished her master's a few years ago, master's in learning and teaching processing second languages, and she's now the research coordinator at the new school after having taught in several schools and institutions in Medellín. And on top of that, she also happens to be another Renaissance woman of sorts, as she's a stage actress, and she still performs and she still does acting at the theater level, and she combines her acting with the language teaching, and she has some really interesting proposals about arts-based research. And finally, introduce our third panelist, Julián Londoño-Mazo, recently graduated from the BA for this program, for the licenciatura. Sadly for him, he didn't take the methods and approaches class with me, but he's part of the research lab. And Julián also has a very interesting background. For those of you who are into the world of video games, Julián combines his teaching duties at Benedictinos with the research he still does with us at the Literacies and Languages Project with his role as a professional gamer. So Julián is still he's a professional competitive gamer, and he has competed in tournaments for Crossfire all around the world. He's been to China, he's been to Brazil, he's been to different parts of Asia, and he has an extensive background as a professional gamer that we are taking advantage of for our research. His contributions as a professional gamer to the work we do on gaming literacies has been instrumental, has given us a dimension of our work that it would have been difficult to get without his help or the other semi-professional gamers that are part of the bunch. So after this introduction, I'll be just moderating. I'll stop talking because that's the way I like to do it. I like to leave the room for the three of you. So a little bit of context then. So today, this week, we're talking about lesson planning. We have an introduction, but I would like to ask you a question, several questions. So how do you understand it, or what is lesson planning for the three of you? Let's begin with that first question. And feel free to jump in, any of you. I mean, don't, because I know you're trying to think that. No, just jump in. I mean, this is not something that you take turns. Just jump in and say and overlap with each other. It's a conversation more than like a lecture or something like that.
Okay, so what's a lesson planning based on the context of our country? What's a lesson planning based on institutional context?
Well,
what's a lesson planning?
Well, what is lesson planning for you? What is lesson planning for you? Let's begin with you, the perspective as a teacher, and from the again, you can answer this question from the multiple hats you. And I would like you to answer the question from the multiple hats you wear, because like you and Gloria have this position where you're doing teaching, but you're also doing teacher coordination. So you play with those roles. Julián is like right now, like in the position of just being a teacher. But so from your position, how would you say, or what would you define as lesson planning?
As my own personal definition of what a planning is, like the guideline for you as a teacher to have clear what would you like to achieve with your students. Yes, what's your goal with them, period.
Perfect, thank you. Gloria,
Okay.
Julián.
Okay, for me, it's like a way to connect the curriculum content with the school methodology and my own style of teaching, which is quite difficult sometimes. In my case here at school, we have like 2 platforms and 2 textbooks to work with students, and it is mandatory to use them. But at the same time, I'm always trying to do what I really like to do with students, which is based on critical literacies, and at the same time using uh, the language art to promote the uses of the language in my classroom. Sometimes it's quite difficult because my boss, I'm not teaching right now English anymore, but my boss used to tell me like, you have to use the book, remember to use the book. He made a lot of corrections to my lesson planning because I was always focused on what I really love to do. And for example, what Tatiana says at the beginning of the meeting, that kind of evaluations we don't like. And when I planned my evaluations, uh, she always corrected, like, this is, this is not about a project. You must try to do like a traditional evaluation. So I learned a lot about how to use textbooks and how to evaluate in a traditional way my students, keeping my own style. So for me, it was a kind of really, really good experience, because when you are planning, when you are facing a planning, you have to consider the methodology of the school you're working with, and you have to respect it. And also you have to use all the resources they are giving to you, and you have to follow the curriculum. So that is a challenge when you're still trying to do something different, and you're gonna learn. And in my case, I learned a lot, and that's what I think about planning. It's that kind of way to connect all those things.
Awesome. Julián, what about you?
Yeah, actually, mine is shortest, but like lesson plan for me is like the guide for every single class. So it shows me what I have to do and how I'm gonna do that. But also it showed me what students have to do and how they are going to do that. And that's it.
Raul, I would
Yeah.
like then to complement something that what Lori, you reminded me. Of course, my role as coordinator as well, and um, lesson planning for a coordinator is also having clear what the team is going to do with the students, right? How teachers are preparing their classes, how are they, of course, using Gloria's words, connecting with students and following some kind of a guide given by the coordinations. Yes, in many schools, academic coordinators give instruction as, of course, you need to follow institutional methodologies, ways of teaching, and so on, right? But of course, it's sometimes it's complicated to match that your own style of teaching, what the institution wants, and what it should be done, because of course the context, it's in constant change, right? And of course, we know that education changes like very slow, but unfortunately, that. So one of the things that sometimes clashes in what I can say as a lesson planning is also a way of learning for you as a teacher, to challenge you, of course, to know how to reach, how to connect, sorry, with your students, and also to try to not uh, to discourage from what the context story is telling you that you have to do.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good start for the conversation. I mean, there is one question for Valentina. We're going to get to the question in a little bit. So, I mean, I'll jump to that question in a little bit. But I want to go in now that we started talking about the institutional part, and I think that's an important thing, important consideration here. So, a little extra context. When I talk about the lesson planning in the methods and approaches class, I don't go over formats. And I think Gloria and Tatiana are familiar with the lesson plan assignment we used to carry out in past versions. I like to talk in the class, okay, give some, I give the highlights of some of the general elements that would be in a lesson plan. But lesson plans in general, I have realized that they also depend a lot on that macro level, which is institutions. So, and that goes into my question, kind of like what does lesson planning look like at your specific institution, in the sense of, do you have to, or your teachers, do they have to fill out some kind of format? Are there specific formats you're supposed to fill out? Are there parts of the planning that are very strict, and are there parts of the planning that are more open-ended? And of course, how about the paperwork? I mean, is there paperwork you have to submit at the beginning of the year, at the end of the quarter, the end of the year? And because I think those questions are also very important for the audience, for the pre-study teachers and novice teachers that we have listening to the webinar. We talk about lesson planning sometimes as a very abstract thing, but the probably thing is lesson planning is very much grounded in the reality of the places where I work. And no two institutions do lesson planning the same way. There are some basic ingredients to a lesson plan that we all kind of follow, but I think that talking more about the context of lesson planning institutions would be a very helpful thing for you. So I would like to start with that. Again, what does lesson planning look like at your institutions in terms of formats, expectations, deadlines, etc.?
Okay, if you want, I can share a picture of a lesson plan.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That would be
Let
wonderful.
me try it. I have it. Can you allow me to share?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you can. I mean, everybody can share. I think everybody. No. Who can share? Okay, I got it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think you can share now.
this one here. That is. teacher, here, lesson planning. Can you see my desk, Kana?
Yeah, yes, yes.
It's a very simple way of planning. Uh, Here they have like the competences, and they also, oh, let me say here. We have like a this initial part where they describe topics and criterion and competence, and then after this you have to plan period by period or term by term, week by week. We have always a moment of silence at school, and we have to respect it. It must be a kind of mindfulness activity before
Okay.
to start our classes. That's mandatory at school. So I used to play videos about helping people, or short 5 minutes meditation, that kind of videos. Or
Mhm.
sometimes some students propose it. This is how it looks like. If you see, there are a lot of uses of student book or the platform we work with, but sometimes I don't do it. I mean, sometimes I says, okay, I'm not gonna work with the book. I don't like at all, but I have to, yes, I have to uh, be clear in my planning that I'm using it. But sometimes I try to use it, not using it too much, but I have to. I mean, I try to play with that. Is what I do. That's how it looks like, and we have to plan every 2 weeks. But I prefer to plan the whole period, because I have a lot of things to do, or I had a lot of things to do when I was teaching and coordinating at the same time. So I, what I did, it was just planning the whole period. And now I'm not teaching, so, but the idea is just try to have a clear idea about what I'm gonna do during the whole period. That's it. This is how it looks like. It's a very simple form, I think so. Yeah, I'm gonna stop.
And this
Raul,
is very helpful. Yeah. This is very helpful. I am actually unmuted myself by mistake. This is very helpful. And even I'm talking. I have another question. I'm gonna weave it here because Gloria, you started with that, and it's the question about the frequency of planning. So you already, I mean, as you talk, you can also talk about if you plan. You said you plan for the whole year. So I mean, because it's also important for the young teachers to know how much planning should happen. Like, should be planned for the week, and even again, and even if the school has expectations, because there are schools that expect you to have like something already laid out for the whole year, and then you go into the minutiae of the everyday lessons. So I think that is um, a very good question. And I like the visual example, because that also helps teachers get an idea of lesson planning. Juliano, Tatiana, you want to jump in at this point?
Juli, if you want, go ahead because mine is sorry. I'm doing some expressions, but talking about lesson planning right now, I'm fixing some problems with lesson planning with my team via WhatsApp. So go ahead, Juli.
Multitasking, the way of the
Okay.
future.
It's okay. Yeah, no, actually, I want to go back in a point that actually Tati said, that it is about the context where we are planning. So it was like, I don't know, incredible that I found this school. Like, okay, the lesson planning is based on gamification. And like, okay, I have been doing research by like almost 5 or 6 years about gamification. So that fits me a lot. I love that. Like, okay, I'm going to do that, and I'll do my best. So I did a match with this school, and that was awesome. But also I want to share with you like how uh gamified lesson plan looks like, right? Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen. Mm, Wait, where is it? Okay, it's here. Okay. So I'm in charge of third graders. So I have to plan my classes. It's like, so first of all, I want to say that here we changed some things because of the pandemic. So our lesson plans are the guides for the students. So we have to plan the classes in order to students know what they have to do. So our lesson plan is the same of the student's guide, right? So how a gamified lesson plan looks like? Look, we have the welcome, so we have some class rules. Okay, we have to do it all of that in this platform genially. We have to do it on genially all time, all time, all time. So for example, our whole period isn't based on our narrative. And okay, Lord, that's Lord for me, Professor, that's Lord. So actually, the period is this period. The first period is about Avengers. Why Avengers? Because I do research of what's the life of my students, why they like to see, why they like to talk about. Okay, so okay, we are going to work in base of Avengers. So I designed this. Okay, we have some text. Thanos has returned from the past to destroy the infinite gauntlet. A goal here almost achieved. Okay, the gauntlet is divided into 9 pieces, and they have to recollect those 9 pieces all over the period. So every single piece is a challenge. What is a challenge? An objective. So an activity like it is like over 2 weeks, and when they accomplish the activity, they will receive 1 piece.
I love your planning.
That's absolutely gamification, right? So
I have another question regarding, sorry, before you jump in the other one, because
okay.
I used a lot last year before pandemic and everything. And now that you're talking about gamification thing, what's the name of this page? Classcraft? Class. Am I naming, wait. Am I naming the right? Wait. Class craft. Let me see if it's Classcraft. Yeah, it's Classcraft. I don't know if you're familiar with that page because it's very similar to what you are presenting. Because it's a how to plan and how to present content to students in a gamified way. I mean, I know
Yeah, no,
you are the master in gamification, so you're reminding me a lot of that web page.
Okay, no, I'm just doing in this page. I don't know familiar with the page, but I have to look at it. Of course, I have to look at it. Classcraft. Okay, so every single activity has to be connected with the period narrative. So all time we're talking about the Avengers, but doing also another kind of activities. For example, challenge number 1. What is this about? They have to create a blog, right? They have to create a blog. They are third graders and they have to create a blog on Blogger. That's a platform that it is not easy for them. So what is the motivation that I can give to them? I say, we really need to design a space for Avengers, a virtual space for the Avengers, okay? So you are going to design a space where you can write, insert images, make a design, functions, and etc. Whatever you want about your favorite Avenger, etc. So I explained them what is a blog for, shaping and symbolization. So I like, okay, I got some blog examples about superheroes. So this is a blog example about superheroes, Iron Man, etc., Justice League, whatever they want. And then they have to do the production thing. What is the production thing? Okay, let's take a look at it. The first entry about, okay, we're going to create a entry about that. So why did you choose that Avenger? What is your favorite superpowers, characteristics, etc. And the real objective is that they learn how to use a blogger, right? How to put information on the internet, how to design, how to download images, how to insert images on a blog. And that is connected with Avengers all time. That's why. That's my classes look like, and the second, third, and oh, I have to plan like all the periods before it starts. So I have to have my all classes ready before the period starts. So look, I have like this one. Yes, for example, this class is about robots. Okay, so I have to think because I designed all of this. So I have to think, okay, how do I connect robots with Avengers? Okay, Iron Man. Iron Man can help me a lot. So let's take a look at Iron Man suites. Let's look at a video, watch a video about Iron Man suite. How is the process of creation? Because actually, I didn't mention it. I'm teaching programming right now. So yes, that's why I'm working in technology, because I'm teaching, but in English, of course, but programming all the time. So that's it. They have to know how a robot works, and I had to design this. So this is like,
May I be your student?
of course. So they, for example, in this case, we are thinking about how develop the algorithmic thinking, right? So they have to answer how to solve this by codes. So this is the answer for this square. Like every single robot works with commands. So they have to follow the commands to solve certain paths, and that's it. So this is the example. Uh, how can you use symbols, and the homework. That's it. They had to solve all this, but the motivation was the Avengers thing, and I had to develop my topics in base of that. That's it.
Juli, sorry, is the so you teach what's the name of that subject? Technology, what?
Yes, it's like technology, but the name here is
Robotic.
programming. Yes, it's programming, but the last year was programming. This year changed by code, because this is a lot of creation of video games too. So we have to create video games, but it's like, okay, first they have to learn how to commands works, like instructions, like a robot. Okay, instructions, because the video game design is about just programming things like command by command by command by command to follow the steps. So
And what ages are those students? I'm sorry.
third graders.
Third graders?
Yes, third. Also, I have fourth graders, but I'm not planning for grade. I'm just in charge of third grade explanation.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you, Juli, for that.
Thank you.
I want to be your student. I want to be in that class.
Yeah, that's cool. That's why, like, okay, I like video games, and that's why I told you that it's very interesting what you say, because like I did a match with this subject, this school, because they set me free. Like, okay, you have to plan the class, you have to teach, for example, this program team, but okay, you do whatever you want, just follow these requirements, and that's it. It's your classroom. You can gamify it. You can create your own rules, etc. And it's like, it's my son, okay?
I love
It's
it.
my salsa. Send me salsa.
Yeah, that's you, and I love it. And I love it. Tati, would you can now, could you jump in now and talk about the lesson planning from your side?
Yes, sure. I'm going to share a bit before sharing screen to show you how does lesson planning look like. It's also how some institution works. As you saw, many institutions right now, specifically because of the pandemic situation, They decide what platforms to work, what cloud to use, what Zoom and things. Sorry, I'm going to mute here the other computer that I have. Sorry, I feel like like a hacker with the computers right now. Sorry, but talking about lesson planning, I have my team here working on lesson planning, asking me things. So basically is another side of the coin that it's part of what you are told, of course, when you start in an institution, okay, how the institution works, how to plan, and timing, right? And same here, what Gloria does and what Julian as well. What we do at SILECS is that we plan using specific forms from the school, of course. Every SILEX, I mean, let's just to give you the context. SILEX is a program from the Language Center of the University from UPB, and we intervene the English aspect, the English subject in schools, yes, from colegios arquidiocesanos, right? So what we do is that we adapt to what the school does. So if a school has a specific form on Drive, so we work on Drive. If a school works on with Microsoft and Office, we work with that. If the school has Zoom, so we go with Zoom. So depending on how the school gives the instruction to work, we adapt, because of course, even though we are something aside, we cannot be that part and that independent aspect from the school. So that's one of the things. Second aspect that you should take into account in some schools, it's Icontec. Icontec is the accreditation, remember something, I don't remember that right now, the full name of it, but many schools work with forms and specific forms because of acreditación de alta calidad. So that's why many schools have el formatico. I'm sorry if I call it like that, but it's true. It's what you're going to face in your schools, and that's why those forms changes over time, in a year, in a semester, or every 4 or 3 years, depending on those things, right? So that's why we have to work in SILEX with the form that the school applies, because that's approved by Icontec, right? Thank you, Raul, for the Instituto Colombiano de Normas Técnicas y Certificación, Icontec, right? So let me share then screen. Wait, I forgot how easier. Here, share screen. Screen, share. Okay, in here you see how the cloud of SILEX at San Marcos, this is the name of the school where I'm coordinating. So in here I have the folder in which teachers, if it works, they upload planning weekly. We do not plan semester or the whole term because of some academic guidelines given by the Language Center. Yes. So every week, every Friday, teachers need to upload their planning for the following week, taking into account some specific aspects that I'm going to show you right now. So in planning, we have the distribution by terms. Yes, and it's so I have preschool, primary, and high school. Planning in here, and everything needs to be in Spanish, of course, again, because of the Icontec, because of this accreditation thing, that if they come to school, they need to read and need to understand what we're doing, basically, right? So if, for example, in primary, I'm going to show you then one of the forms. The forms, I told you, we follow the school form, and what I need as a coordinator to check is that besides that teachers upload planning on time on Friday, that they follow some specific aspects of planning. And in that is where my teacher, university teacher, comes out. So for example, I'm going to show you last week plan. So in here, and of course, another thing that you need to understand is that the populations, in preschool, elementary, and high school are completely different. Even elementary with elementary students and high school with high school students, because of course their cognitive level of learning is completely different, and the activities that you can do and populations changes. So again, context. My favorite word forever, it would be context. So in here, this form, it's a bit slow internet, I'm sorry, let me do. Okay, so in here it was adapted for COVID, so that's why this planning needs it's named COVID, that's why. So in here you have standards. These standards are taken from Guía 22, okay, same as indicadores de desempeño. And the contenido conceptual, eje, and contenido eje conceptual, right? These are in our syllabus, okay? And can you hear me well? Because I think that I don't know. Yes, okay. And pregunta problematizadora. Why? Because school prefers to work based, school methodology is based on the PI, it's currículo problematizador, and something more specific. So going back to what the institution looks like, to vision, mission of the school, it has to be planned in here as well. So in here we have ambiente sincrónico and asíncrónico. Fortunately for the English area, we do not have asynchronous hours, just synchronous. So in here we write what week are we on, the dates, specific dates. And in here we have some other aspects of planning, componente curricular, if it's the communicative part, if it's speaking, if it's listening, if it's something more specific with that. If it's a project, what part of the project is that, and so on. So in here we divide by days. Of course, I prefer with my team not to write the specific day, because of course every week, specifically now with alternancia, things are changing a lot. So if you're writing here, for example, this was Monday, but Monday teachers couldn't apply this planning because whatever reason, so they just moved planning. They just take that same planning and readapt it for the following day. So we always have to have a learning objective, a warm-up, teaching part, a practice, and a wrap-up. That's how the Language Center tells us, of course, to apply our classes. And then we have some links, because teachers like, it's important for teachers. We have in primary, I have 7 teachers. So 7 teachers need to at least share resources as well, to be on the same path. And also because of the school, not to be so sometimes picky, because parents might say sometimes, but my son is in 1st grade and my other son is in 1st grade, because they are twins in San Marcos. I don't know why we have tons of twins. But I don't know what kind of pandemic was that of twins. So they sometimes complain and say, but in 1st A they did this activity, and 1st B they did not this activity, but at least so we some things that they can share. So after the warm-up, the teaching part, teachers like to at least to write and to paste what part of the book they're taking the information from, what part of the platform they are using, and the prompts they're using. So the way also the planning is written, that's one of the things that I have to do also as a coordinator, to see if the planning can defend on its own. Yes, that everybody that can read the planning, anybody, any teacher can put it into practice, because of many reasons. A teacher gets sick, I need to cover something. Me as a coordinator, many times I need to cover classes, so I need to understand what and where are we. So that's why at the beginning I said it's a guideline. Yes. So, and in here we cover 5 days of the week. So, and in here, if we're using the platform, it goes directly to the platform, or the song directly to the YouTube song. Let me then go, I forgot. There. Then if I go back to our cloud, in our part of our planning, it's also the resources. Many times teachers, it's easy to find resources online, many other times it's not. So teachers prefer to do their own resources to use in class, and they are connected with the planning because, of course, then they can use it and just click it. Of course, right now because of the pandemic, right? So let me stop sharing. And then in as per school platform that we use it as well, Google, but with UPB we use Microsoft. So we need to work with both. So the cloud on Microsoft for UPB and everything. So directly from the language center, they can take a look at it. They can check. They can make comments. So what is my role as teacher? Yes. So as a teacher, I plan for my own classes. I share my ideas with with the rest of the team. Listen, I have this idea. I'm going to do this with first graders. What do you think? We share. We have that community. Yes, because we have those meetings of se llaman reuniones de área, right? Where we share our meetings, when we share our ideas, and then every teacher personalizes their own plannings. Anyhow, we have just one planning that needs to be uploaded there because of, again, Econtech and standardization processes, right? So after we have that planning over there, every teacher can have access to that planning. I just, on a notebook, I take this song because I like this song, the same thing with my first graders. But then I know that my first graders are more passive, so I need to motivate them even more. So I add another song, or I do another game, a different game. But I have it as for myself. Then me as a coordinator, as a role of the coordinator, because I switch the two of them, what do I do for those same plannings? I make comments on a side note. I add a comment and I ask teachers, listen, it's not clear to me this activity. What are you really going to do with students? What's your real purpose for your students to do with the, I don't know, you were seeing their nature. So you're going to work, okay, they're going to name, I don't know, a vocabulary about nature. What for? Yes, remember always the what for. That's my second favorite question this year. What for? Not only because of naming nature things, but what for? Yes, and of course, as a coordinator, I also have to remind the team to be punctual and to motivate students a lot with their planning. If I see in a lesson plan that it's sometimes, and I know also the context of the students, and I know that it's a group that needs to be motivated a lot, or that we have students with special needs, so we need to adapt our planning, and we need to do something that it's called PR. That it's something that yesterday I was talking about PR with some of these students in my course of discourse analysis. PR is something that the Ministry of Education said that we had to include that for adecuaciones curriculares for those students who need and who have a diagnosis. Yes, depending on the kind of diagnosis. So we need to adapt our planning to those students with special needs. Yes, as well. So I need also, as a coordinator, to check if teachers, have students with special needs, if they adapted that planning for that student with special needs, and if that file is online, and that they need to do it on time. And of course, as well, motivate the team to find resources, or even myself to help them out to find resources and to work on strategies. Yes, for classes to be, of course, successful. Sorry for taking a lot.
No. And I like that. I mean, there are some questions, and I'm going to get to those questions in a moment. I just want to wrap up because the next question I want to ask, because right now, I mean, we have a very clear picture of what some of those elements of lesson planning, but I also don't want the students to leave today with the impression that there is no room for their creativity or there is no room for their own personality within the lesson planning. Because I mean, right now it feels like, oh no, all I have to do is fill out forms and execute forms. And there is a lot more to lesson planning than filling out forms and executing forms. We talked in the class that there is one, I mean, that obviously I cannot compare the amount of, the way I plan my lessons as in higher education versus what you do in schools, because as a university professor, there are certain principles of academic freedom that allow me to do certain things. And that even though there are institutional guidelines, they're not necessarily, they are not as constrictive as some of the forms that you have to fill out the school level are. So it's a whole different situation. But even so, I still have to comply with the certain guidelines, the descriptive charts that we have to fill out, and I still have to comply with that. But I have a lot more wiggle room. But it doesn't mean that you don't have wiggle room. There's absolutely no latitude when you're teaching at the school level. So that brings me to the next question: is where we already talked about the institutional part of your lesson planning. Now, how do you negotiate and how do you introduce the personal, your own identity, your own personality, your own ideas about teaching? How do you weave them within the lesson plan? How do you bring, kind of like, how do you bring yourself into the lesson planning? That's the next question I want you to talk about.
Okay, in my case, it's a really difficult to do it during the English classes because they have to use a lot of resources, but the resources, I mean, they're quite good. And as I told you before, I learned a lot from it. But I prefer to do a certain kind of activities where they have to interview their parents, they have to go out or whatever. So I'm going to share with you a video made by my students as an example about what it's like 3 minutes, like if you want. I mean,
Let's just, I mean, I would say right now because of this, the video is gonna go online.
okay.
Then I would have we can if we have a link I can share with the students so they can watch it, because otherwise I would have to cut that. I would have to cut that from the video because of
Okay,
yeah.
maybe I can share one which is not, I mean, they're not students, they're just their voice.
Perfect. Yeah. That would be perfect again because
Yes, I know.
we have and we always, I mean, I always have to comply, make sure that there are certain expectations when it comes to copyright and expectations when it comes to like the presence of certain people in the webinars. So yeah.
I wanted to share short videos about what I did as an English teacher. Now I'm going to share this short video about what I did as a theater teacher. Okay?
Yeah.
Because here, I'm not going to share the whole video, just the beginning of the video. We were here creating characters, and the idea was just to, they had to choose an artwork, a famous one, and they had to create a story around that artwork or to create a character description. Then we put all those parts together and we write a short theater piece. Okay, so I'm going to show this pretty short. This is not, wait, this. So they are just trying to tell story through the picture.
Is there an image?
Is there audio in the story?
Yeah, that is audio.
Okay. Yeah, but then you just remember in a case like this, when you click on share screen, remember there is an option that just click on computer audio. You have to click on that, otherwise we won't be able to hear it.
Ah, okay. I didn't know it. I
So you can,
sometimes I don't know how to do it in Zoom.
it's all right.
Okay, but if it's just like, oh my God, check again. Mhm. Audio, audio. I can. Ah, yeah. It's. I always work with Teams. Sorry,
Okay.
they was just trying to. Can you see it now?
Yeah, we can see it now.
They're just
It was a
trying to. Oh my God. Okay, here it is. This one. It doesn't work. I don't know what happened.
It happens.
It's just here.
it was a
Oh,
normal day like any other in this city. A city that has been nicknamed the uneventful city because really nothing ever happens here. And just like any other day, nothing was really happening. Not even at Philly's restaurants, Philly's dining. Philly was happy to be working here just as he is every day. Really, he wasn't expecting anything but to sell his famous coffee. But today, he had some very, very unexpected visits coming his way.
Oh, yes, come in.
Hello, hello. I came here for your coffee. Heard it's pretty good, huh?
Yeah, word around town is that it's the best coffee ever made. I got people coming from different countries.
Okay, that's all. I mean, it's quite long,
but it's
but
it's
it
amazing. Yeah.
yeah that yeah they just try to play voices to some famous pictures, and based on that they start like creating a story, and then they have to perform a story together, putting all those like putting all those stories together, and just try to do like a I don't remember how to say that in English, dramaturgical exercise, like writing a
Mhm.
bit of play, and that's it. That's the theater, and in theater I can move uh, as I want because I don't have to follow any textbook or whatever, but I have to use English, and also I have to help some students to improve their English. So when I this year I had to make a decision at school because they asked me to stop teaching to focus on my coordination process, and I asked them to continue with the theater classes. So I have a theater lab with some students, they want to be there. And also I have only one theater class, only once per week, but I wanted to continue because I miss to teach, and I feel like teaching theater, I can help students to improve their English. And I have some students who, I mean, they really need it, and they enjoy like using the language in a different way, not just following textbooks or just focus on grammar, but doing in this kind of activities. They love it. And that's it. That's what I wanted to share because the other activities that my students faces up here, but it was basically interviews to their to their relatives, and some interviews around school and planting and all those things. We do it during the English classes, but also for our research projects. That's it.
Gloria,
Thank
I
you,
want to
Gloria.
be your student too.
The theater one, no, just the theater one, please, Tati.
Okay.
Yes, yes. I want to ask again.
Nice, excellent. How about Tatiana and Julian about that? Where you how you weave the personal into the lesson planning? How do you go about it?
Okay. So I think that I already said like okay, I have to fulfill a product that, for example, this is the product what what students have to solve. But the other team of Avengers, Iron Man Suite, etc., that's mine. Okay, I already know that students love Avengers, but I love Avengers too. So it is like that's me all time. Okay, I know that the school have some requirements, but as I told you before, they set me free. They okay, go on. Every class, every single opportunity that I have to show my personality is like this how work. This is my job, and they accept it. Okay, just do it.
Nice.
So my personal, how do I include my personality in the planning? It's basically again, and how I try also teachers to do the same is with the what for question. Yes, even though we have the steps of warm up, teaching, and wrap up, and every practice and wrap up everything, the part of the personality is, even though we have a book, everything, every time I also remind the team is book is not the Bible. Book is not there to tell you what to do. You are the teacher. You are the one who decides what goes into the planning and what doesn't go into the planning. And if you have to change something, even during the class, you have to do it because the context is telling you, and the group is telling you that they need something. I'm going to give you a short example of what I mean. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I was teaching to a kindergarten group. They were 18 students, and one of them, it was January, end of January, something like that. So beginning of the year, they were getting used to English, they were getting used to the teacher. So context. One of the girls arrived thrilled, telling me, teacher, one of my teeth fell. I lost one of my teeth, and yesterday, I know in that moment, sorry, in that moment happened. Not that she arrived, but in that moment happened, like half an hour before my class started. So her tooth out, and I told her, oh, okay, so the tooth fairy or Ratoncito Perez is going to visit you today. And they were like, who's that? So I had something planned for the class, but I had to change because the topic drove me to change the what do I have to talk in during the class, because of the need of students to know. They wanted to know who was Ratoncito Perez and the Tooth Fairy, and why we have both, and why we have in Colombia Raton Perez and sometimes the Tooth Fairy. So in that moment, I had to readapt to talk about that specific thing that was happening in the class. Otherwise, it was a mess actually, because in the moment I was trying actually to go back to the topic I was supposed to teach, but it was, I mean, I couldn't. Students were more interested in the blood and teacher, pero es que le está saliendo sangre. And so that's what I mean.
And no, and I love that. I think it's important for the young teachers in the session right now, once we watch the webinar later, to understand that even if there are all these forms and all these guidelines, there is one thing that characterizes schools, and it's the degree of uncertainty that we have to deal with on an everyday basis. I mean, I was a school teacher for almost 10 years before I moved on into higher education. And there is always the uncertainty. When Tatiana was pointing out, oh, we don't put a date because you never know what it means. We can have all the best intentions in the world to teach the class on that given Monday, but something happens. Something happens on that Monday, and then you have to move the class. So even though there are, and that's important consideration for the novice teachers. Even though there are, and we lost Gloria or oh no, Gloria just turned on the camera for a second. Even though there are all these formats and there are all these all the paper we have to fill out, that is always confronted with the reality of the ever-shifting nature of schools. I mean, that's what makes teaching in schools so challenging and at the same time so exciting. So it's this interesting combination of how, I mean, there's a thrill in it, but that you sometimes you always get prepared to do the class, but you never know what can happen at 8 o'clock. So you always have to be prepared. And as Tatiana mentioned, that's a real life example. So I mean, it's a real life example. Student lost a tooth, and now we all want to talk about the tooth fairy and the cultural differences. Why a fairy? Why not a mouse? Why a mouse? Why not a fairy? And that is also where I say the personal is going to come into play. Your ability to kind of like this, like they say in the Marines, improvise, adapt, and overcome. Because, I mean, and we talked about improvisation here, and you all know my quote about improvisation being the most advanced form of planning. That you have, I mean, I always advocate not to improvise completely, but you have to be always ready to make changes on the go. So your lesson plan, and I think all you can agree, that should be flexible enough to allow for those situations to happen, to allow for circumstances like that tooth fell, or there was an earthquake like we had a couple of days ago, or yeah, that there's always the ever-shifting nature of everyday life, and that the ever-shifting nature of everyday life needs to be part of the lesson plan. Because otherwise the lesson plans become too rigid, and when the lesson plan becomes too rigid, then it doesn't really lend itself to learning. Now we have questions. I want to make sure we have time for the students' questions, so I'll go in the order they wrote in. So I have a kind of like a combo question here that Valentina and Roland and Catalina kind of followed up with. So I'll try to. So Valentina is asking, all right, when it comes to prepare that topic for the class, how are you going to explain it? What do you want to get from the students, and how are you going to know they get it? So kind of like in the lesson plan, how do you organize that? And most importantly, how do you, and I think the third question is the more important question, the most important question of the three. How do you make sure your students get it? Or how do you make sure your students are learning whatever it is that you have in mind in your lesson plan?
Well, in my case, I try to plan focusing on the process but not on results. I mean, I try to assess my students' process. I don't like to focus on on the expected results, because I think when you focus on results, you are just like closing your teaching process view on the curriculum. That way you are focused on the process, and you are assessing your students along this process. You are sure they're learning, or you know what they need. So what I do is just like feeding. I try to feedback them, like almost I spend like one or two classes just feeding them back, especially when they're writing. I try to spend time enough feeding them back, because in that way I can try to understand clearly their individual process. And once I have, and at the moment I have to evaluate them, I'm going to know not only what to expect, but also how to help them to do it better. Yeah.
Okay, in my case, uh, actually, we work with results, because this is like a vertical, I don't know how to say it, like, okay, like maths. Programming works like maths, okay? If they have to write down this code, it has to be perfect, no mistakes, because 2 plus 2 is not 5, it's 4. That's it. And that's how programming works. So I have to evaluate the results if the code is working or not. That's it.
Sorry. um, well, I was just trying to read again here the thing in the question about assessment, and I actually like to think in one of the comments that one of the teachers at the faculty told me back then, and it's that I do not like, and the same thing I said to say to my students, even at the university and at school, that they're not a number. I don't like to think them as a number. So that's why if I tell them, if you want a 5, then for me you already are 5. Just keep it. Your responsibility is to participate and to keep that 5. That, I mean, if that's what you want as a student, okay, keep that 5. But I'm going to be accompany you through the process of keeping that 5. I don't like actually how we think and how we are supposed to think assessment and evaluation. We have, of course, to follow some guidelines from the institution and everything else. Yes, of course, the weight of some exams, um, and the process itself, and the cognitive, procedural, and everything else that we have to take into account. But me as a teacher, I like to follow the process of my students, and just during, of course, during the year and the term, we have to tell them, okay, this is your grade because of this exam, or this is the grade of because of your quiz or something. But because, of course, it's also something that parents want to know. But you know that you can have that like that feeling with your student, that you can tell them, listen, don't pay attention to the grade, to the assessment part, but leave to me that that job. And the other question was, sorry, Raul, that I didn't, you're muted, sorry.
Yeah, it's basically that. Again, that happens. It's basically that. How do you make sure they get it? How do you make sure they learn? And I think you just made a very interesting point about the whole assessment. I mean, yes, assessment is a part of this, but I always, and I one of my from all of my quotes, I have one I always like to use, and it says that I like to say that if you give students a reason to bring their A game to class, they'll bring it. So it's more than giving a boring assessment. No, worry about giving them a reason to do it well. Give them assignments and give them activities that invite them to do their best. I always say, if you give students a reason to bring their A game to class, they more often than not, they will bring their A game to class. And I think that's important in the lesson planning. Plan lessons and plan activities that invite students to give their best within the institutional guidelines, within the institutional safety constraints, if you will, within the guidelines and the forms and the standards. They are very rigid sometimes, but there is a lot of wiggle room if you know how to navigate it. And I think I'm going to go into Karen's question. She wrote a question here. So, is there in some point a way like choosing time of the topic? So, because I think for sure you as teachers have a lot of material to take the classroom where it's impossible to have all of them developed. So how do you as teachers, or how you as teachers can sort it out? How can you manage the selection considering that all the content has the importance? So the kind of question goes into, okay, when I'm planning lessons, what do I prioritize? What do I prioritize? And how do I organize that so I can cover most of the material, but still make sure that learning happens?
Well, in my case, okay, do you want to sort, Julian?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, in my case, in the English classes, I always try to connect content of book, content of the curricular content, book, literature books. We work with 2 different literature books, and the other platform. I try to connect all those topics through a small project. In that way, I try to be sure I can bring my own ideas and materials and try to do something where students can reflect and can just try to narrate their own experiences. Okay, like because if not, if I don't, I mean, I try to choose something or material they can, I can like placed on students context, like okay, my students context or or the context of my student is telling me this and that. They think they need to reflect more about the importance of family because I don't like what I'm hearing, and try to just give give to them through the materials the opportunity to talk about themselves in a creative way, just using pictures. Sometimes I ask them to create a biography of their grandfather or grandmother or something very important in their families. I also ask them to interview his or her favorite teacher or to make a video about a neighborhood who is incredible helping others. And I try to focus on those small projects, considering the material we need to use or the resources we have to use. It's not easy, and I have to spend more time than I usually could spend if I don't think about my students' voices. But I think it's what I focus on when I'm selecting the material, even for theater and even for my research projects at school. I always try to focus on how can we help the community, how can we improve our world through those projects, not just like, oh, let's planting because planting is a beautiful process. No, let's planting and do something meaningful with the plans, or let's try to recycle and sell what we are going to recycle, what we're recycling. We are going to sell it and we are going to help this foundation or this people or this foundation of these animals, whatever, or because this is the real thing we need to think about it when we are teaching. It's not just a matter of learning English or learning how to research at school. It's how can we transform our societies, what I think so, and how I select my material.
Okay, and in our school we have something selected by, we are working based on DBA, right? So like the first 6 activities have to be in order to accomplish that objectives. And then if we have time, we are going to develop it. For example, I'm just going in this example. This is the basic challenge. Yes, right. So what's the high challenge? Okay, now in a program, it could be code and Scratch. We use those programs, those programming programs. So they have already designed this exactly like this design on the computer, and they have to solve it now using the commands that the program gave to us. That's the high challenge. But also we have the superior challenge. And what they have to in the superior challenge, that is at the end of the period, they have to design their own square there with like it is in blank space, and they have to design it, right? So the school says that, okay, you just have to accomplish the basics, and if you have time, you are going to develop. That's right, we manage these sections. And also I want to jump in another question. I hope that Giselle, this answered your question. And I think that Catalina question is connected with Paula question too, that it is about, okay, what happened if like I don't have the material or someone is not motivated by the Avengers or what happened. Yes, of course, that happened in my class. So what I have to do, like, okay, um, I have these are my students' blogs. So for example, Emma, I don't know, are you seeing the blog in this moment?
Yes, Juli. Ah, no,
Yeah.
not yet.
No?
We're still saying that the Excel file.
Okay, wait. Yeah, now,
Yes, we can see it.
okay. This is the blog of Emma. Okay, the first entry. Okay, why did you choose? Okay, Gamori's Avengers, right? You got it, you did it, you like it, you like the Avengers. But what happened when let me show this. Like, okay, I don't like the Avengers, I like Mujer Maravilla. Mujer Maravilla is not Wonder Woman. She's not Avengers. Okay, you can do it because the purpose is the same. The purpose for me as a teacher is that you have to create a blog. You learn how to insert some certain images, and you got the idea. The idea is that you choose one character, whatever you want, and you develop this topic. Images, text, and you publish. That's my objective. And that's it. Yes, I think that's my answer to that question. Okay, if a student don't feel motivated, but the Avengers, choose whatever you want, but you have to do the exercise that is create a blogger and put images and text on it in this first entry. That's it.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think that question, the question that Paula was asking, is important because we cannot. I mean, even as much as we want to do personalized learning, as much as we want to accommodate, there comes a point that it's impossible to create complete custom-made lesson plans. We can play around them, but yeah, saying that I'm going to create 30 lesson plans for the class, it's an impossible task. But we can always think, okay, there is a core, and then think about how you can create alternatives and you can create options for other students to be able to do that without having to necessarily comply with certain aspects and that maybe and have I mean, you can offer alternatives, and I think it's important to always keep that in mind. I'm just gonna start wrapping it up because I've already taken a lot of your precious time, and I'm very grateful for the insights. Just to wrap it up, once again, students in this class, they're just 2 semesters away from starting their student teaching. Tatiana was in that position, Julian was in that position as students in our program. And you know what goes on your mind as you start getting, as you know that moment that you're gonna be in front of your class is coming. What final advice? I mean, you have given students wonderful ideas, and I think they should just come back and watch this video again and again and again. What word of advice from your experience as a teacher who's still in its beginning part of the career, like Julian, or teachers who have a little more experience and are already moving into becoming better at teachers, like the case of Tatiana, the case of Gloria. What advice would you give these teachers, these future colleagues, these fellow colleagues of yours, in terms of handling the lesson planning and the overall act of teaching when it's their day?
Raul, to answer your question and some of the questions that are here in the chat and some other things that you said before, I think the most important thing, some of the most important things that I can say as an advice is the first one, when you were saying what to give priority first, always your students are the priority. Think always in your students first, in their context, in their needs, in how to plan for them. If the planning is not for you, planning is for them. materials are for them. Okay, they're useful for you, yes, of course, but material is for them. So think in your students first. Second, you when you arrive to a school, whichever school it is, public, private, if it's something, give yourself time to read the context, to know how the school works, know how the system works, and learn how to play with that system. Yes, because of course, again, form is there, planning is there, materials are there, syllabus are there, malla curricular is there, but the brain is yours. You are the one there who knows how to start playing with that, how to go around. And yes, I have to do this, but I can also do this other one. Why not? And another thing that you were saying here, there is not a perfect and organized lesson planning. Never. I mean, everything is on paper. Everything would be always on paper, but also always be prepared to unexpected and happy moments in everyday class life, because they will always happen in there. Again, with the tooth fairy and the mouse example. And if you think on how to choose a topic, on how to think lesson planning as a puzzle, uh, always again go back to your students. Do not think them as outside of the process, but they are the core of it. Yes. And how to choose the topic, many schools they decide what topic is, but of course that is depending on the context of the school. So those are my advices.
Thank you, Tatiana. Gloria, Julian,
Uh, Short advice is like you have to be prepared for everything. Okay, like in my case, I match with this school, but this is like okay, maybe later I'm going to work in another school with another rules, with another situations, and I have to be prepared for that, because it is not like always you will find a match, you find a context where you feel okay. No, this is a new challenge, this is a new methodology. Okay, let's do it. I prepare myself for this, for every single context. But if I'm not prepared, I'm going to read, I'm going to learn as Tati said, okay, I'm going to do it. I will do my best. That's why I am applying it like all aspects of my life, not just working, but is that. And it takes time, right? For example, the last year, okay, I just followed the instructions that they gave me. And the last year, this lesson plan, like uh, didn't exist. So I just continue with a line that they told me how to do it. But this year, okay, I learned how to do it. I'm gonna present my own project, but I keep following your instructions. But this is kind of different. Can I do it? Yes, no, yes, Julian, you can do it. Okay, do it. But it takes me a year, like reading the context, learning how this works, what are the rules, and that's it. But it takes time. Be patient. It is like yes, it is not like easy, but be prepared for everything. That's my advice.
Okay, my advice is just try to do your best for your students all the time. It's the most important thing, your students. You can play with the curriculum, with the content, with the materials, with the methodology. You can play with it a long time. You're learning and reading the context where you're working, as Tatiana says. But most important thing is how do you do with your students? Do your best, and please don't be that teacher who repeat the same activity the whole year all the time. Like 10 years teaching the same is like having just 1 year of experience teaching because you're still doing the same 14 years. So try to do something different. It's quite hard planning something different all the time, but it's the best not only for your students, but also for you as teacher. And you are going to realize how much your students are going to learn not only about the language, but also about being better human beings and how you're going to improve too in both ways, in your language uses, but also in your, being a better human being too. That's it.
I really want to highlight that last thing Gloria said, and I actually put it in the chat for my research lab. That thing was saying having 10 years of teaching, doing the same thing is just having 1 year of teaching experience. I think that is the quote. That for me is the quote of the day. That is the best way to summarize what lesson planning and what teaching should be. The sense of evolution that has to happen as you grow. And I think I cannot, personally, I cannot top that quote. I have nothing I can add to that. I think that should be one of the big lesson about lesson planning. If you're going to take one lesson, take that lesson and run with it for the rest of your career. So we're going to stop here because we could go on, but we all have things to do, and I don't want to take up any more of the precious time that these three, as you already noticed, three brilliant, talented, driven, motivated, and caring teachers. I don't have enough adjectives to describe them. Except that I'm super lucky that all these three are a very small sample of the brilliance that I get to interact with on a daily basis at the Literacies and Psychology Project. So for the three of you, my gratitude for the time, my gratitude for the wisdom that you shared this morning, wisdom that is from the classrooms, it's in the classrooms, it's not the theory, it's not just the theory in a methods class. Methods and approaches class has to be theory, but it has to be practice, it has to be reality, it has to be life. And you brought us for an hour and a half, you brought us life, you brought us wisdom from the classrooms, and wisdom that I really invite the students in this class and all the young teachers who may watch this video on YouTube to listen, to let it simmer, to dissect it, and to use it and apply it. So with that, thank you to the three of you. Thank you so much for an incredible conversation about lesson planning that I think even I learned a lot from it. So my appreciation to all three of you. I hope all the students got some good ideas out of this. And with that, thank you so much. And a reminder for people watching this video, it's part of the LSLP in Session webinar series that we have in our YouTube channel. We invite you to check this video and all the other videos that we have in our collection. So Julián, Tatiana, Gloria, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raul. Thank you, Julián and Gloria.
Bye-bye.
And everybody have an excellent day.